Hey, it's Sam, and I'm talking about May 2021 Vedic Astrology forecast. We're going to see the shift from planets in fire signs to earth signs. We're also going to see some retrogrades. We're moving up to an eclipse. So we got some big stuff to talk about. So stick around, check it out. So, as you see, we have the chart here of May 2021, and we're moving up to this date. It's already, 2021 is flying by, folks. It's flying by. As you see, I put in the chat box a link. If people are interested in studying more about Vedic astrology, you can click the link or go to VedicAstrologyEssentials.com. You get 10 hours of classes of courses deeply discounted for less than $10. So it's a great group of classes that will help you understand Vedic astrology in a deeper way, especially with all of the universal frameworks that are also underpin yoga and Ayurveda. So today we're going to talk about where we're at right now. And you see this is May 1st. I have the chart drawn for May 1st right here. But I'm recording this on April 28th. We just had the full moon in Libra, and now the moon is in Scorpio. Ooh, Scorpio. Scorpio. Scary. Not so scary. So it's a very devotional day. Scorpio is, very devotional and emotional, but also it can be kind of fearful and nervous and worried and, feeling vulnerable. And then, the moon continues around the zodiac. I'm going to be talking about the larger transits today. I'll do a day-by-day May forecast in a couple days. But today I'm just going to talk about the larger transits throughout the month. But as you see here, this is where we are today, April 28th. And then, again, for a couple days, and the moon is also with Ketu, who is in Scorpio. Then we go, and on May 1st, you see that the moon goes into Capricorn for a few days, and it'll join Jupiter by the time we get to the 5th and the 6th. And by this time, we've already seen Mercury and Venus move into Taurus. So you can see by May 1st, Mercury has moved from Aries, where it was at the beginning, into Taurus. So again, we're going to see this in the next, by May 5th, well, actually by May 4th, Mercury and Venus are both in Taurus. Now this is, quite a shift, and it's quite auspicious for both Mercury and Venus. I did a recent video where I talked about Mercury and Venus in Aries, particularly in Bharani Nakshatra, which is about, having to bear. I had it over here. I had the bear paw ready. Bear. I had it on. No. So we just did this about Mercury and Venus in Bharani Nakshatra, right? And also, the sun. But Mercury and Venus are going to move into Taurus. And again, Taurus is a sign ruled by Venus, much more practical, down to earth, sensual, more about relationship, more about sharing, more about other people. Whereas right now, at the end of April, they're in Aries, where we're much more individual and much more, maybe even a little bit fired up about what we want. What I want this. And again, the sun is in Aries. Again, it's a time to really be expressing our individuality without guilt, without stress or fear or worry. Like, no, this is the thing I want. And, then the chips have to fall where they may, but it can be too extreme where we stop considering others, or we might even feel guilty because we have to turn our back on others who maybe want us to do other things. These kind of trade-offs are difficult for that Venus and Mercury part of us who wants to get along with people, right? So that recent full moon that we just had, that I talked about, that full moon in Aries really brought this, the full moon in Libra really brought this out, this inner conflict where we to honor our own path, but we also want others to be with us, and sometimes we have to compromise. And how much integrity is in our agreements, and what other kind of stuff is going on. That's the cycle that we're still in, and we're going to be in that cycle until 2 weeks after this full moon. But as you see, with that full moon, we had these planets up here in Aries, again, all of them in botany here. And so, again, where we're at now, as you see, they keep going. And by the 4th, they've not only left botany and moved through Kritika, but now they're in Taurus. So again, that's much more of a welcoming environment for that Venus-Mercury part of life that wants to, enjoy yourself with other people, communicate, feel practical and calm and not so fired up and individual, and ready to perhaps do battle over your bad agreements. This is one of the difficult things we have to watch in Aries, and especially as we get around the full moons and whatnot, is that now we're ready to do battle over those agreements that really are our fault. If we don't have good agreements, it's because of us. Only you can make a bad agreement. Nobody forces you to make an agreement, right? So the frustration that you may have over your bad agreements is your lesson to learn how to honor your own wishes first and know what they are, then make an agreement based on strength and based on self knowledge, not based on neediness or greediness or wanting something from the other person, wanting the validation from the other person and whatnot. So again, these are very complicated things because we all have histories. We come from backgrounds. We've all been, we all have tried to get along with others. And so it's, this is a complicated relationship thing, but it's also shifting. It's moving into the next area in May. Again, you can see Venus, Mercury are there by early May. And then the Sun, who is still in botany, he's still in botany at the beginning, trying to bear it. He's trying to bear it. He's saying, I'm going to bear that pain of difficulty. Just like the bear mitt, he's going to come and get you. So the Sun is moving into, he'll be in Taurus, like you see here on the 4th. The Sun is at 20 Aries, so the Sun moves 1 degree every day. So then in 10 days, he'll be in Taurus. And so, so you can see it's by the middle of May that the Sun actually moves into Taurus, by the 14th or 15th. And so this, so this is the, this is the shifting, the big shifting that's happening in May is these planets moving from Aries into, into Taurus. And 1 second. Okay, so yeah, so moving from Aries into Taurus is happening. That's the big shift that's happening in May. And so as you see, the moon continues. It'll be with Jupiter here in the early part of May, May 5th and 6th. And again, we see the moon, these planets moving through these nakshatras, and of course, Venus, Mercury are going to be joined Rahu in Taurus. And then the Sun also joins. This is why we're also moving up to the upcoming eclipse. The eclipse is happening in early June. And so the other thing that this begins a cycle of Mercury being in Taurus or Gemini, one of those two signs, for like 3 months. So it's quite an auspicious transit of Mercury for the next couple months here, because Mercury is going through through Taurus or Gemini. So this and it's starting there in early April. So this is another big shift that's happening in May. So as you see, then we have another new moon that's happening right at the end here of May 11th, and then we have auspicious day called Akshaya Tritiya, which is going to be happening. It shows when both the Sun and the Moon are exalted. And then we have this, finally by the middle of May, the sun also moves into Taurus. And this movement of the sun also into Taurus really sort of completes the shifting there of, from the fire signs to the earth signs. So again, there's this big shift from fire to earth that is happening in May. So again, what that means is this individuality, this individual, desire to express ourselves, which came around the middle of April, especially with the sun in Aries, then sort of moves into something that's more accommodating, more, more gathered, more collected, more integral, and also, more domestic and tangible, practical. The Taurus sign really brings an enjoyment of life and a desire and a capacity, rather, to really be content with what we have and feel peaceful about what we have, rather than being always longing or always, searching for the next thing. This is what can happen in many of the other signs, is we can be always longing and sort of restless for the next thing. And so in Taurus, one of the great yogic lessons is the lesson of santosha, or contentment, right? And contentment is, regardless of what happens, I accept it. It's also acceptance. It's one of the reasons why the moon is exalted in Taurus, because the moon is the thing that's restless, that feels restless. It feels anxious and feels stressful because something is missing, right? You can even think about, we say that the moon is full or the moon is empty. Again, think of even the words empty and full. And those are the words. It's called Purnima. Purna means full, and so when the moon is full, it's like the pot of water is full. It's like bright, right? So one of the things about the moon is it gives us the capacity to feel full, to feel that if something, infiltrates our consciousness, we have enough reserve and enough emotional resilience to endure that thing, right? I use it, and the reason I'm talking about the moon is because it's exalted in Taurus, so it really shows you something about Taurus, that the exaltation point of the moon is here. That energy is the energy that stabilizes our restless mind. And again, it's debilitated in Scorpio, where our mind is, again, it's fearful and vulnerable and agitated mentally because we can't relax, because we're stressed and worried. And one of the symptoms is feeling like nothing's ever good enough. It's like this sort of criticism, always finding a problem, finding fault, getting irritated about something that doesn't exist right now. The only reason we feel like we need to change something is because the moment is not full enough for us. Again, this is very Mars energy, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just to understand the nature. Taurus is the nature that can easily feel content. In fact, it can feel too content. It can just feel content with anything and often resist changing things that need to get changed. Like every astrological indicator, it's not a judgment of good and bad. All of it is good, ultimately, but it can cut in two different ways. So the real capacity of Taurus is to feel content. Again, what's called santosha, content with what we have. If you've ever seen cows, all they need is to, put a thing of food in front of them, and that's it. They're calm, they're content, they'll eat the food, they'll eat it. After they've eaten enough food, they'll sit down and they'll just be happy. until they get hungry again, and then they're unruly and mooing and ready to tear down the house because they want the food. They also want to be next to the cow that they want to be next to. They want the moment to be fine. And if the moment is not what they want it to be, literally the moment of like the food and the cows that are next to me, then they're not pleasant to deal with. You take care of that and they're very calm. Not only that, but they'll be affectionate and they'll make your food. And again, so Taurus people have that real capacity to enjoy. But again, what I said before was that the difficulty of Taurus is they might have such a capacity to enjoy that they might have 95% of their life be in utter chaos, but because they can enjoy the 5%, and their capacity to enjoy the 5% is so high that they'll wind up ignoring the 95% that needs to be changed. This is how Taurus can just endure hardship and difficulty because they can find so much enjoyment just in that thing. And they're afraid that if they change the 95%, it's also going to change the 5% that they actually like. So they'll just endure and endure and endure the difficulty because they're afraid that they're going to not get the 5%. This is the extreme of Taurus and being kind of stuck in a sort of pleasure cycle. Many times, this is one of the things that with Taurus clients or others that I know who want to, do something and sort of change something in their life for the better. Let's say even something especially like a career or something where it's going to disrupt their pleasure cycle, disrupt their money or food or other people in their life, where it might represent some kind of change that they're not sure if it's going to disrupt the comfort cycle. The Taurus has a hard time changing that because they're like, because they're not really sure. So sometimes Taurus can get stuck in the familiar and sacrifice their growth for the familiar, right? But in a detrimental way, I've also seen where Taurus people can endure even things like abuse and all kinds of stuff for a long time because they are more afraid of change than they are of taking positive action in the moment to destroy something that might be damaging. So this is one of the things we have to be careful of with that Taurus energy. But as you see, by May 14th, we have these planets now have moved into Taurus, and it's going to bring this cycle of stability, structure. And as you see, the sun is also getting near Rahu. So then the next time the moon comes around here, we're going to have the eclipse. I believe that the exact date is June 10th. That we have the solar eclipse up here. And so we have this, one second. So we have this, this shift. Now, we are going to have, I wanted to make sure, I thought I was right, but I wasn't 100% certain. But yes, on the 26th, we're going to have the lunar eclipse. So with the lunation cycles this year, often the full moons are coming before the new moons, and so this is showing that here on May 26th we have the full moon. It's a debilitated lunar eclipse here in Scorpio. So again, this is coming after this recent full moon in Libra. Then we have this, the next full moon is this eclipse in Scorpio. It's a difficult one, of course, because now there are two sources of difficulty on this moon. Again, the moon is exalted in Taurus, where emotions are stable. It's debilitated in Scorpio, where emotions are volatile, and it's also being eclipsed here. So, as we get through May, especially as we get through this part of May, and we get and the moon starts getting closer to this waxing, this waxing half of the moon, get near like the, after like the 6th to 7th Tithi, and starts getting closer to the full moon, we could really start to feel some of these toxic ideas and projections coming into our life. And, some of the difficult emotional situations that you may have with some people or whatnot could really blow up in your life a little bit. One second. Excuse me. And so notice this especially from like the 20th, like May 20th through like the 26th, really till around the end of the month, especially. This is also joined Ketu, which is the eclipse. Then it's hemmed between Saturn and Ketu, and then it's joined Saturn until the end of the month. So May 20th to like May 30th could be pretty heavy emotionally. Psychologically, for sure. And as you see, the moon gets closer toward this full moon. It'll be a full moon in Scorpio, but also the eclipse, because the eclipse is joined Ketu, the south node here. Now, you see it's in Anuradha Nakshatra. Anuradha is a very devotional, is it? Yeah, okay, yeah. So it'll be in Anuradha Nakshatra. It happens it's right at the point. Because, and so Jeshta is the next. It's right at that point as well, but it's just in Anuradha here. Jeshta starts at 1640, so it's right at that point. And so this is a very devotional nakshatra, where especially any kind of spiritual practices related, to the Divine Mother and to purging toxic entanglements and emotions. Again, it could be difficult in that sense, but what's really rewarded in Scorpio is that devotional purity and purifying of the heart, purifying of our attachments, especially. Excuse me. And you see, how Scorpio is opposite of Taurus. Again, Scorpio is a Brahmin sign. It's a sign of the Brahmins, or the teachers, the water signs, which are the ones who are devotional, naturally very devotional. But again, it's ruled by Mars, so there's a strengthening that's going on, a strengthening of our emotional weakness. And again, it shows the courage to be devoted, the courage to be devotional. And much of it is the courage to look into our own, again, toxic tendencies, because this could be really coming up. Again, it doesn't matter. It's not about if you're a Scorpio or blah, blah, blah. Don't personalize it. We all have this tendency. And it's about our tendency, and it's the tendency to feel emotionally vulnerable and fearful of being overwhelmed or killed or dominated, or all of these things that we're afraid of. We all have it. And so the key to that is to not be afraid, is to not give into the fear, because it's irrational for the most part. Again, we can remember, but what about my childhood? When it's not right, your childhood is over, okay? Alert, childhood is over. Ding, 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 right? Again, it's not to make fun of it. I'll tell you about my childhood sometime, okay? But again, the thing is that in the present moment, where the truth is, and where devotion is, and where that love is, and where that access to the strength and the access to that contentment and peace that I just talked about with Taurus, which is the opposite sign, in the moment, there's nothing but pure bliss, divine love. It's all there in this moment, right? And so accessing that and having the emotional courage to access that is the highest quality of Scorpio. And this is how and why, in Western astrology, they have a lot of, I kind of joke sometimes about the sort of romance, cue the Hollywood music when you start talking about Scorpio in Western astrology. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes and this and that. It's not, and I sort of joke about it because sometimes there's too much focus put on that part of it and not enough put on the catalyst. The catalyst of the phoenix rising from the ashes is the scared little the scared little bug, which is really what a scorpion is. It's a little small animal that hides and tries to avoid getting stepped on and all of that stuff, right? That's the origin. But then ultimately, yes, it's like a very transformational sign. It's about transforming our emotional fear and our emotional vulnerability, and again, the irrational fears of all of those things and how they can kind of dominate the present, and transforming that into into enormous devotion and having the courage to do that. So I'm talking about this a lot because, again, this is going to be a big part of May, especially the last part of May, for May 20th, to the end of the year. I'm sorry, to the end of the month. We'll have that, we'll have that be a very dominant theme. I'm blessed to be a devotee of the Divine Mother, of Amma, and to have, found these beautiful teachings and gurus in my life. So those are times to really put those teachings into practice and evoke that grace and courage. So this will be a big part of the second, half of the month for sure. So, and if we go back, we see that we have a retrograde cycle. We have two retrograde cycles that are also happening that I want to talk about within, and that's Mercury and Saturn. Mercury goes retrograde on the last day of the month, but Saturn goes retrograde, there it is, 22nd, 23rd. So Saturn is retrograde about half the time, so it's not unusual that Saturn is retrograde, but it's significant when he turns retrograde. He's been going forward, and, we can see this as sort of collectively and otherwise, that we're looking at what to commit to. This is what Saturn is. When he's forward, we're saying, okay, now this is what I'm committed to. This is what I'm working hard to, and I'm not going to give up on this type of thing just because it's difficult and just because it's hard. So wherever Capricorn falls in your chart, this is an area of life right now where you're trying to really grow and really be focused and committed to making that thing grow. Like if you're a Cancer person, Saturn is hanging out in your 7th house. So he's bringing this need to really commit and concentrate on your agreements and your boundaries and your relationships, and not turn away just because it's difficult, right? Because he's going through the 7th house. If you're Virgo, he's going through your 5th house, which is what you want to create, So that's the aggregate placement of Saturn, but he's reflecting almost half the time. He's forward like 7 months, and then he's retrograde 5 months. So, he turned direct like last November or so. So since like last November, we've been saying, okay, this is what I'm concentrating on and focused on, right? And so it's, Saturn has been moving us forward in those areas. Then he stops and goes retrograde and says, okay, now I need to reflect on what I've been committing to since last November, right? So again, in itself, it can feel kind of subtle because, again, it's not unusual that Saturn is going retrograde. He's already slow. It's a slow planet. And so when he goes retrograde, it's not as different, but it's still a shift, particularly anyone who has planets in Capricorn. If you have planets right around this degree of Capricorn, you'll definitely feel it if you have a Capricorn ascendant. Again, any important planets there, they're all important, but especially if it's like a ruling planet or the moon, these are more significant. I happen to have my Saturn there, so that's relatively significant as well. It's a Saturn return. So you'll notice how even now things are starting to slow down a little bit, and you're starting to recalibrate your commitments again, because when things are, you have to look at the relative and sort of aggregate motion of a planet in general. Mercury goes retrograde, and it happens pretty quickly because he's moving fast, right? He goes fast, and then he's like his, what's called stationary period, where he's stationary retrograde or stationary direct, is much shorter. Saturn, by the way, right now is already stationary in the sky. You see, the whole month, let me just go back, he's at 19 degrees, 15 seconds. Saturn's at 19 degrees for the whole month, pretty much. He's pretty much stopped in the sky the whole month. He's at 19 degrees on May 5th, by the time he goes retrograde, look, he's hardly moving at all. By the time he goes retrograde, he's at 1921. He's barely moved. He's like stopping in the sky. Stop, 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 stop. And then he turns retrograde. So the planet Saturn is pretty much stationed or not moving for the whole month. He's like stopped at about 19 degrees of Capricorn. So again, you have any planets right around 19 degrees of Capricorn. Again, and when I say around that, that could be, I mean, mine is at 29. It's not right on it, but even that's, 10 degrees in the sky. If you look in the sky, it's like that much of the sky. It's hardly nothing. Well, no, it's about that much of visual art when you look in the sky. So it's still not that much when you consider it could be anywhere. But especially if it's right around, I would say 15 to 25 degrees, that's really tight. And particularly if it's about 15 degrees, because now he's going to go retrograde and go backwards over it. Then he's going to go turn direct and go forward over it again. So this is what Saturn winds up doing. He winds up covering the same space like 3 times. That's the way he moves. He's like, dun, 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 dun. That's how he goes through the sky. So any planets around that degree will be very important, and you'll feel it more. But also just in general, all of us will be recalibrating our commitments. Like I used the example of the Cancer person, right? Saturn's in their 7th house, whether they have any planets there or not. He's been going forward, whether they have any planets there or not. He's now stationary, whether you have any planets there or not. So again, when the planet is stationary, it gets really concentrated, which means it also gets very bright in the sky. So you'll start to see Saturn will get much brighter in the sky. You'll see him there, especially as we get into June and July. Particularly in July, you'll see he'll be much brighter, and he'll show up really bright on the western horizon after sunset. And so, I'm sorry, on the eastern horizon. And so all of this is his natural motion, but it's really a shifting of our commitments right now relative to wherever Saturn is. If you're Aries, it's in your 10th house. Leo, your 6th house. Again, Pisces, it's your 11th house. So you're recalibrating your public life or whatever it might be. So that's a big, that's also a big thing to consider in the month of May. But again, so this is definitely what we how we need to look at these outer transits, because they definitely affect us in ways that are much more immediate. People want this is going to be an effect that lasts for quite a while, and it's not like I just looked at an eclipse. Well, the eclipses also last for like a couple months, but it's not like I looked at the sun moving from Taurus or from Aries to Taurus or whatever. That happens, and it's relatively quick. Saturn this is a long-term transit, so you'll start to feel priorities shift and recalibration of your commitments. Again, think of what I mean by your commitments. How many things are you really committed to? How many people are you really committed to? Which means I'm in this. I'm concentrating on this. This is a goal, or I'm really focused on it. We don't have many of those things in our life. Like with me, I have my work. I have different parts of my work. I have parts of my fitness, my whatever else it might be. I'm not in a romantic relationship, but I'm, people in my life that, I'm committed to being your friend, or, whatever it might be. So those things start to move a little bit. And so the last thing, to talk about here that I want to get into, is this Mercury. You see, he flies through Taurus pretty quick. And this is what happens when Mercury goes retrograde. He starts to slow down as well. 21. Look at his degrees. Mercury covers about 1.5 to 2 degrees a day on average. His speed is quite variable because he's always, he's the fastest moving planet. So he'll go really fast when he's behind the sun. He can cover more than 2 degrees in one day. Then before he goes retrograde, he starts to slow down also really fast. So you see the elongation here is about 22 degrees. he goes retrograde at about 30 degrees elongation. Let me see. So it starts to slow down 24:48, 25:42. So now, even by May 18th, he's only moving 1 degree a day. So then you can see now 28:33 on the 22nd, 29:04. So now it's only half a degree. You see how fast it changed? Oh, 1 week later, it went from more than 1 degree to half a degree in a week. Now you see here on May 23rd, he's at 29:04. May 24th, he's 29:31. Now he's slowing down at about 29 degrees. So this is also important. If you have planets at like 29 degrees of Taurus or about 1 degree of Gemini, I actually have Venus there. I also have my Mercury is right around there. We'll see 29:53 on the next day. 10 seconds on the 26th. 23 seconds. Again, he's not moving even close to 1 degree. So again, he's going to stationary 30, 33, and then 32 he goes retrograde, right? So any planet like right at that Sandy point between Taurus and Gemini, right? Mercury is going to slow down and go retrograde there. So if you have any planets that are in between, like right at the very late degrees of Taurus, very early degrees of Gemini, Mercury is going to station. Again, now when the planets station, just like Saturn is now, they actually become very concentrated because they're not moving. And again, you want to understand this, as this principle is called Chestabala, and it's the speed of the planet. This is why when planets go retrograde in Vedic astrology, it's a major source of power. And it's a source of power because the planet tends to back up in our mind and consciousness. It gets very bright in the sky, like I told you about Saturn. And as it backs up and gets bright, it becomes an internal, much more kind of spiritualizing force. So just like what I said with Saturn, the reason it's powerful that we reflect and then he goes retrograde is because we're doing something external. We're focused and we're committed to something external with Saturn. But then when he goes retrograde or he slows down, we start to slow down with it. This is why notice right now you're starting to question some of your commitments. Notice how it doesn't mean you're not going to abandon. It doesn't mean you're going to abandon them, but you're questioning them. You're evaluating them. Like, is this thing worth my time? Is this thing worth this effort? Because Saturn is stationed. He's slowing down. He's about to go retrograde. And again, particularly if you have planets at 19 Capricorn or around there, 15 to 25 Capricorn, if you have any planets there, it's even more so, right? And by the way, also the planets aspect by transit. So if you have planets at 15 to 25 of Aries or 15 to 25 of Libra, there's also that sort of recalibration of your commitments because Saturn is aspecting, also of Cancer, because the planets are also aspecting by transit. I happen to have my moon at 25 Libra, so I'm definitely feeling that as well. Definitely feeling that sort of recalibration of my emotional commitments and all this kind of stuff. And also my creative commitments because I have the moon, it's in the 5th house. So we're all feeling Saturn slowing down at that degree, right? So again, and then he goes retrograde. That's the time when we often hesitate and we back up and then we reflect. We might say, okay, I'm not sure what to do with this thing now. And it unfolds externally very slowly, if at all. It might even stop because we're recalibrating our commitments. That's Saturn. Mercury's different. Mercury retrograde, where it's not about our commitments, it's about our ideas, the voice in our head, what we're telling ourselves, what the kind of meaning that we're deriving from what's going on. We have this narrative running in our head all the time. Oh, this means that. Oh, I'm this person. This person said that and it means this. Or we have this idea of what our life is, this story that's going on. And Mercury is the archetype of that story, right? So again, when he slows down, he goes retrograde, we start questioning that story. Like, is that really what's going on? Or what is this? So again, you start looking very specifically. So if you have planets up there near this point where he goes retrograde, again, like I have my Venus up there, let's say that, then again, because my Venus is very early Gemini, literally like right at this degree. It's like 30 seconds of arc. It's going to station right on my Venus, right? So again, my whole relationship to Venus there in Gemini in the first house is like, okay, this is what my relationship is with other people, not just, like a romantic partner, but other people in general. This is how I see it. So Mercury stationing there is like, okay, I'll start to notice, I'll start to question, I'll start to say, how do I interact? How do I communicate? How am I blah, blah, blah. So again, you want to also understand the dignities of the planets involved. Just like that Saturn in Capricorn is very powerful there. It's not this retrograde Saturn. Again, before Saturn had been in Sagittarius. That's not a very strong place for Saturn. It's fiery, it's philosophical. Saturn is like practical, literal. What are the results? I want to commit to something that produces results. I want to be still. I want it to be manageable and simple. Boom, that's Capricorn. Just like Mercury, he's going in between Taurus and Gemini. This is why one of the things that I featured in my 2021 forecast about one of the great shifts, one of the great cycles of this year is the Mercury retrograde cycles are happening between the Earth and the air signs. We already had one earlier in the year between Capricorn and Aquarius. Saturn went retrograde. Now it's between Taurus and Gemini, right? This is good because Mercury is powerful in this Earth and air shit. These Earth and air signs that are right next to each other, right? These are the powerful elements, right? Because Mercury rules an Earth and an air sign. We want that story to be practical. We want it to be sensible, not all emotional, which is watery, not all fiery and worked up, which is fire, right? So when Mercury's retrograde, like around the fire and water, for example, it's certainly not as powerful. That's the weakest. But even like if it's Earth, even if it's like air and water, again, it's kind of half in and out. But this is the best when it's in the Earth and the air, because that's Mercury's nature as well. What's the practical story? What are the results that come? What's the result, which is Earth, of all of my ideas and all these things I'm telling myself? Is any of it what's actually happening in my life, right? What's being produced? And air is about, how truthful is this? How happy is it making me? Because air is driven by enjoying life. And so is Mercury. Mercury is where we're trying to enjoy life with other people, with our own ideas. Again, one of the biggest tragedies of life is people spend their whole life trying to find their own voice. Think about that. Think about people who don't have their voice. How many of you listening are like, I don't know what I think. And when I speak, people don't listen. They don't take me seriously. So I don't talk. So I don't speak. These planets, Mercury and Venus, are two of the most important. Mercury, Venus, and the moon, actually, of self-expression and feeling happy as a person in a body living life. And again, Mercury is very much about people appreciating what we have to say, and us feeling like it's valuable, and that it's legitimate, and that it's worth saying. So again, this is very much Taurus. Gemini is really finding the voice part. Taurus is again feeling content and happy and peaceful in that sense. So again, this is a very auspicious retrograde transit, and it goes for almost 3 months, right? Starts here at the beginning of May and then goes through June, July, and so it's so it's definitely one of those things where it's let me see here real quick. Yeah, April 30th until July 25th. Sorry, I wanted to get it right. So April 30th, April 30th, May 30th, June 30th, right? So it's April 30th until July, April, May, June, July 25th. Yeah, so it's about 3 months. So this Mercury retrograde cycle is really a time to reconnect and try to find your voice. And I'm going to do, actual, dedicated videos to those things. But this is a big shift that's also happening in May, is this Mercury retrograde. And, so you want to keep, your eyes open for that as well. So in general, these are the big things that are happening. We see these shifting from the fire to the earth, right? We see this important lunar eclipse, which really from the 20th of May till about the end of the month, there's going to be a real focus on really connecting to the heart in a more devotional way, not in an aggravated, triggered state. We have a couple retrogrades where Saturn is going to go retrograde. We already feel it the whole month where we're slowing down and we're really calibrating what we're committed to, especially wherever Capricorn is. Also, Pisces and Libra, which is where Saturn is casting his aspects. We're kind of really calibrating those commitments. It's about to go retrograde for several months. And also the Mercury retrograde is going to come around the end of the month. For most of the month, you see Mercury is moving at a normal speed. If we're, he enters on April 30th and he's moving at the beginning, 1757, 1916. You see how fast he's moving. By the end of the month, he's going backwards. Here at the beginning, 322 on the second, 513 on the third, almost 2 degrees at the beginning of the month. You see the change in his speed from 2 degrees to backwards in 30 days. So again, this is why you can see the difference in Mercury. So at the beginning of the month, we're just feeling like we're, a lot of ideas and this and that. By the time we reach, especially like the 25th, he's going normal 24, 25, 26, 27. So by the time we get about the 23rd, by the time we reach about the May 23rd or so, that last week of May, Mercury starts to really grind to a halt. He's only covering like 1 degree for the last week of May. So that's when you'll start to feel around the last week of May that you're starting to question your words, question that voice in your head, and recalibrating it again. Like, okay, what does all this mean? What is that? What's that voice in my head all about? And again, just like here, if you have any planets at that sensitive point, that Sandhi point, because it's happening right at the Sandhi, like again, I have my Venus there, then you can really notice it at that point in your chart. For me, it's also my first house, but you look at that, all those things as well. So, I hope this was, helpful for you. Share it up there. Oh, I know. Share it and bear it and share it. The bear mitt. I don't know why I like doing it. It's just something dumb to do. Underneath it all, I'm just a lot goofier than you might be comfortable knowing. All right. So anyway, share this with others if it was helpful, and you take care.